Can you guys hear me?
We got you, Jim.
All right. Well, technology is always amazing. I love this stuff. Not really, but it works. Hey, I'd like to welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. As I look back, and here we are in the middle of November, we've logged a lot of hours together, and individually as well as collectively on this project. We've talked to many, listened to many, but always focused on graduation and the students of Kansas. As we listen to the experts, and we've heard great testimony and on graduation, and even learned about challenges and successes from other states. Again, I come back to the fact that Kansas is and the educators and citizens have come together, and it's been a privilege to serve with you. And I look forward to this meeting and future meetings as we come close to our midterm, so to speak. And we've got a great agenda for us here today. But before we start into the agenda, I'd like to just announce that we have a couple of new members who will be joining us. Vanessa Harsberger, who is a longtime principal at Bishop Carroll High School in Wichita, will be joining us to represent private schools. Also, we'll be adding Representative Steve Hubert, who represents District 90 in the legislature. He's from Valley Center. Representative Hubert serves on a number of committees. He chairs the House Committee on Education. He's also a member of the Special Committee on Education in the House, the K-12 Education Budget Committee, and just recently, the Joint Committee on Information Technology. Representative Hubert has been a long-term advocate for education, and he and Vanessa will be great additions to our task force. Regrettably, they can't be with us today. They'll be with us here back in December on a December 2nd meeting. We plan a midterm report to the State Board of Education at the December 15th regular board meeting in Topeka. The leadership team of the task force, which includes Jared and Christy, Kelly, and Ed, and me as well, will meet with the board at approximately 10:40 on December. I'll make sure I got this. I had it wrong before. At the December Wednesday meeting on the 15th. The mid-year report will focus on the work in progress of our task force. Each of the subcommittee chairs will report to the state board. Jared will provide a timeline and schedule for the task force heading into 2022 for the state board. The presentation should take about 20 minutes. You can watch this. It'll be live streamed if you so care to, and Peggy will send the task force members a link if you so do choose to watch it. The final report of our task force is scheduled to be presented to the state board at the May 10th, 2022 meeting. Getting used to saying 2022. The state board will receive the report and task force recommendations and take appropriate action in the near future following that report. Don't expect any immediate action on recommendations. The board doesn't work that way. It'll take a while. And it should also be noted that the state board is not the only player to have a hand in what comes next. The state legislature will also have a major say as we deal with changes in legislation and the next steps and final outcomes of the Kansas high school graduation requirements. There's a lot of players that are yet to be connected with. And we're starting that, as you know, and we'll be talking to our stakeholders, but we've already started the efforts with the legislature, and it'll be good to have Steve Hubert joining us in our meetings and in the near future. He will be a great advocate for us. I'll now turn it over to Jared for an update on what's going to be happening here in the near future.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Good morning. I'll just go ahead and say, I think on December 15th at 10:40, that's going to be can't miss TV. And I hope everybody has the opportunity because, and I say that because each and every one of you have been a huge part of this committee and the things that we're talking about. And I just, before I give a little timeline, I want us to not forget why we're doing this. And it's because of those students in the building, the students that have already graduated high school, the students that are going to graduate high school. And I think, I looked at, if you look up the definition of purpose, it says the reason for which something is done. So I think everything that we do and every conversation that we have, there is a purpose behind that. So I think we just have to continue to remember what our purpose is. And that's, whether it's our kids in athletics, our kids in your building, the workforce, whatever that might be, there is a purpose behind the conversations that we're having. And so I'm going to, as I move forward, I'm going to share my screen here real quick. I want you guys to see this timeline. If I could do that. Let's make sure this is the right one. There we go. So just real quickly, November 18th, that's today's meeting. We're going to talk a little bit about some special considerations. I know Tricia is going to present some things here shortly. December 2nd, we're going to continue some of that subcommittee work, continue to give updates on that timeline. And then like Jim said, December 15th, we'll give a 6-month update to the state board, Jim, myself, and the subcommittee leaders. And we'll start to kind of put together those recommendations that you guys are really working on today. And then December 16th will be our last full committee meeting prior to January. And, before that meeting and with the subcommittee leaders, Jim and I are going to start talking about some stakeholder conversations. And what does that look like after we have our draft recommendations put together in January? Now, one thing I did want to mention, in January 20th, so we are going to plan right now to have that meeting in person. We will have a virtual option that you'll be able to join by that, but it's January 20th. We're working on a time. It'll probably be in the afternoon for people that need to travel. And I think we're looking to have that in Topeka. So we're still working on a location. We will have that for the committee in December. So you can plan if you're able to travel. We'd love to do that in person in January. So January 20th is that date. And that's when we'll really put those recommendations together. And so I think today, just want to real briefly, today's a big day. And I think we have a lot to talk about. We spent some time, Jim and I, with Christy and Ed and Kelly and Dr. Watson last week, and looking at what the 3 subcommittees had put together. So those are some things that we're getting really close. And so today I think is really a nuts and bolts, starting to not finalize, but starting to really putting those thoughts together. And I'm just super impressed with all the conversations and the feedback that each subcommittee, we're digging pretty deep, and it's exciting. And we're asking the right questions. And I think that will be the next step, is as we continue, now we just have to make sure we're asking the right people after we come up with some of those recommendations. So really think about today, as you're going through your subcommittee meetings, what the purpose is of everything that we're talking about, and trying to make sure that we're staying on track and taking advantage of that hour that we have together. But I'm really excited about what this group is doing, and just an awesome group of professionals here. So Jim, that's about all I have. I'm going to turn it back over to you to introduce Tricia, who's going to give us some more info today. So
yeah, thanks, Jared. Good update. It should be a really good meeting today, and we're getting close to coming together and pulling this all in together to get it back to the board. And one of those pieces that we haven't talked about yet and needs to be part of our discussion is special education and unique circumstances that students bring to us who face challenges relative to graduation. Tisha Bachman is a teacher at the Kansas Juvenile Correction Complex, and it's my pleasure to introduce her to the task force. and she'll update us today on special education and unique circumstances related to graduation. Tricia leads a work group that has already begun studying the issues related to special needs students in graduation. Tricia has been and is a member of our task force since the beginning. It's been a great pleasure to get to know her, and in the conversations I've had over the last several weeks with her, I'm looking forward to her report. Tricia, welcome, and thanks for your work. The floor is yours, so to speak. Thanks for being here.
Okay, thank you very much, Jim.
Hey, good to see you.
I know we've had a lot of phone conversations, but not face to face. So it is nice. And I look forward to January when we can all actually get face to face. Hopefully we can make a priority to make that. As Jim mentioned, he and I spent some time on the phone talking about the needs of the kids of the state of Kansas. And my heart and my passion in education is somewhat the students who have been left behind. Even though we don't want to leave them behind, they've chosen to leave themselves behind by becoming justice involved students. So my field of work is working in the juvenile correctional facility. And so questions that I had asked on the Special Ed Advisory Council, we call that SEAC. I have been asking questions about our students who have dropped out or quit attending school at sometimes 4th and 5th grade, but they officially drop out through their, high school programs, but they end up becoming incarcerated or justice involved and land with us at the correctional facility. And they come in getting some education, very hit and miss through foster care system or hit and miss through their county juvenile detention centers. And a lot of them do not have credits coming into us because they're not getting put on transcripts. So my concern was, what are we doing for the kids that come into us and they're 18, 19 years old and they have 1 credit? And we know they're getting education somewhere because they can go in and sit down for a GED practice test and rock the math section, which if any of you have not looked at that, it's very intense. It's upped its game big time. There's a lot of skills you have to know and be able to do to pass the GED. So why are we sending kids out with GED diplomas when they have the skills that if we were offering testing out options, or if we were offering the competency-based or mastery-based education options, they could have earned credits? Because we know that sometimes hit and miss through the system, things are not being put on a transcript. So me asking those questions ended up bringing me to this group. And I went to the SEAC meeting on the 11th and presented the 3 different subcommittees that we have here, and just basically told them there's a lot of really good work happening on the graduation requirement task force. And one area that we need input from them is, how do we address this with special education? So the state has mandated every school gives 21 credits. So one of the conversations that we had was, how many people are writing accommodations or modifications onto students' IEPs that they're only going to have to meet the 21 credits? And so that really brought up a lot of conversation as far as, what if they haven't been justice involved, or what if they haven't been in foster care? And so those are situations that we're going to definitely be asking all of the stakeholders when all of us go out and survey our school boards, our districts, and find out, do you have kids that you think that their best plan would be to meet the 21 requirements? That might even hit some of the kids who qualify for the 18 to 21 program. Districts can add more credits. Before I came here, I was at Silver Lake, which is just down the road here from Topeka, and they required 28 credits. All of our kids were getting 28 credits, and some of our kids would have benefited to focus on the 21 basic credits. But I don't know that we really realized that that could have been an option. So then we had the second conversation was, what value added credits do special ed kids need when we're looking at that as part of their IEP? And every single person really put emphasis on, we've got to start adding value add credits in the areas of their transition. So making sure that the IEP transition goals are written directly connected to the classes that we would offer them once boards approve what the value added credits would be. So helping them, not necessarily tracking them, but giving them the skills so that they can go out and they know and are able to do the skills to transition them to the workforce. I don't know how many people know, but the percentage of Kansas kids who go from diploma to couch is really high. We also are trying to avoid the prison pipeline that gets talked about frequently. And so we feel like if we're giving them their elective options in the areas where the value add credits are going to be distinguished, that this could truly benefit our communities by giving kids the skills they need when they go out into the communities to be successful at employable jobs where they're not going to continue to be just as involved as adults. So after having all of those conversations, we went into voting time, and they said that we do feel like the Special Ed Advisory Council needed to have a subcommittee to study what the graduation requirements are, how special ed teams are addressing those currently, and then see if there's any recommendations that we could make as a subcommittee, and then make sure that we have information and we're just, surveying every aspect of the populations that we're trying to represent. That's basically all I have.
Hey, Tricia, we do have one question.
Okay.
It's just said, could you tell us more about how and why these students' traditional credits are not being appropriately recorded?
Okay, so that is, it's one reason that I'm very happy to be on the Special Ed Advisory Council. We have been addressing this last year and this year. We have kids who go to the local juvenile detention center or the correctional setting in their counties when they're picked up from the law enforcement. While they're sitting there, some of our smaller counties have combined JDCs, and the sheriff is overseeing that. So last year we had a committee come together, and Stacy Martin from the Department of Education wrote a Dear Colleague letter to all the JDCs, and several of them, which are being run by the local sheriff, wrote back to her as, why are you considering us Dear Colleague? Because they had no idea that when kids are coming in there, that there is a legal responsibility for them to provide the education services. So if a school doesn't know that a kid has been locked up, they just stop attending. And we sometimes don't reach out as soon as we should, especially if a student has an IEP. We have a legal right to go in there and make sure that they're getting their education. But there's the whole gray area of, is it the people that are incarcerating them that are supposed to provide the education, or the local school district? And basically what we found out is it goes county by county. And so since there is so much variation county by county and JDC to JDC, there's too many loopholes, and these kids are continually falling through these loopholes, because they might get picked up in Wyandotte County, but they're actually a Wichita kid, or they might be a Lawrence kid that got picked up in Dodge City. And so then who's responsible for that kid? Is it the local school district? Is it the place where they got incarcerated? So we're trying to clean up a lot of loopholes, but the kids get lost in the middle of those conversations. Does that make sense? All right. Were there any other questions? We do child find as soon as kids come here, but we also have a lot of time that we're in school during the summer that other schools are not in school. So we have 2 people on our staff that track down records. They go to all the registrars of the schools in the state of Kansas, and they try and get as much information as they can. But just like us, sometimes placements where they've been or JDCs where they've been haven't sent records to them. So we have people who are constantly looking for information and credits and trying to get them what they feel like they've earned and deserved. I see a question that says, do we have demographic data on these students? I know that our website hasn't been updated for juvenile corrections for this facility probably in the last year because of COVID. But I know that typically within our correctional setting, we have about 30% are Hispanic, 30% are African American, and the other 60%, or the other 40%, pardon me, are white or Caucasian. And typically our population that we have here represents 1% of the population of the state of Kansas. I see a question that says, what subject areas does the GED test? I'm thinking in terms of our 5 areas of successful high school graduation. That's a great question. So the GED tests English, math, science, and social studies. And they have to get a minimum of a 145. We actually have an official federally mandated testing site here on campus. So our students, we have a huge population that they come here for 6 to 9 months and they don't have enough time to get all their credits. So on our students who come in with IEPs, we write on the IEP that we're going to continue the IEP. We do all new testing so that we know what their baseline data is. And then we have them continue working on core credit classes until they meet every single graduation requirement from the GED. So if they've passed English, math, and science, and they're still waiting on their social studies test, they're attending class all day, every day until they pass that last test, because we prepare them in the classrooms, even though they're preparing for the GED.
Trish, I just wanted to add real quick, and then I'll turn it over to Jim. I do know we have had students in the past that we've had to push, or they've dropped out and wanted to go get their GED, and then they found out that getting the GED is actually way harder than they anticipated. Well, and I will say, I know up here, at least, the kids to get it over at, I think over at KCK, they're required to attend courses before they can take the GED, which totally shuts a lot of those kids out. So I think this is a very valuable conversation to see how we can help, that 1%.
Right. And I've had, the devil's advocate, I've had people say, so this is like what, 300 kids a year? And I say, yes, this is 300 future adults that we could have to, pay for programs and services and welfare and things because we let them fall through the cracks. But I would rather it be 300 kids a year on average that are going out, and there are skilled workers that are successfully working their way up through the systems. Maybe some of our kids are even having the opportunity to get associate's degree, and we encourage them to take business classes. Maybe they become their own independent business owners. Typically, our kids don't like to answer to a lot of people. So we try and teach them, manage your money well, budget your money. And if you want to be a business owner, that's a lot of responsibility. They, of course, think it's just a really glamorous and easy way to live life, but they don't know the stresses of owning a business. So we hopefully give them all the skills so that if they choose to do that, they can go out and do that.
Tricia, your statement a few moments ago that the GED is way more difficult than people perceive.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids are always like shocked when they find out they have to go to class before they can take it.
Mm-hmm.
And to tell you the truth, when I became a principal, I was shocked to find that same information out. It's not generally known.
Mm-hmm.
On a bigger picture here, we would like to get away from the GED. They are better served if they have a diploma, and we're trying to change the pipeline, to incarceration and to couch to the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And there are, as we spoke, opportunities that we'll look at and you'll look at for students to show mastery or competency and get those credits they need, rather than the concept that has been, basically put upon us that everything is time-based.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this could serve the graduation task force could make a significant inroad into changing the culture of kids going to incarceration. And I know that doesn't sit well with some who believe that they should be punished. Well, they should serve their sentence, their time, and that's important. But we should also not make it that they are then burdened by the fact that they do not have a certificate or recognition of any educational achievement, and that being the diploma. So I think the work of this task force is brought to light that you have some avenues that you didn't realize you had in terms of providing students credits. Because many times in these, it's only a few credits. It's not a whole lot. Now, for some, it is a whole lot, but for others, it's not, you know. So yes, this is a much bigger issue for you, and you know, this is a great step to bring these kids back from the edge, you know. So yeah, I'm looking forward to working with you. I know you have your your own little sub work group of folks that are going to make recommendations to us that we'll look at. I think it's great that we've had this opportunity to look at the students that you serve, but also I've been in touch with Mr. Bert Moore for Special Education Director. SEAC will be having more conversations about graduation and special needs students in the future, and we'll have a lot to say as we go forward to serve an expanding group of students that we need to meet their needs, not just because it's law, but because it's the right thing to do. So thank you very much. Yes.
Jim, I do see that we have a question, and I think maybe you would be better to answer that than me, because I don't want to speak broadly.
That's dangerous.
Yeah, well, you have more experience to speak more broadly than I do, but somebody is asking that they didn't realize that an IEP team could allow a student to graduate with 21 credits. I know that we have Senate Bill 23 where kids who've been in foster care or who are justice involved, that has always been the gold standard for why we would offer them 21 credits. But I think this is this is from Teresa Brown's, and I think she's worded this very well. So do you want to speak on that?
Yes, and again, there's two parts to this that I would address immediately. One is that people across the state really don't know the rules, because it explicitly says that incarcerated students can have 21 credits, you know, meet the state standard, you know, for graduation. They just don't know it. And then the second part is, you know, in terms of an IEP, that the IEP follows it, that there is a responsibility for the school, even though they're in incarceration, to be part of that IEP, you know. So yes, that's a good question, and easily answered, that we just don't know. It's not widely disseminated about these options, you know. And I, as a principal, was taught that by a school psychologist. You know, I didn't hear it in class, didn't hear it in circumstance, you know. And too often we think that a student who is incarcerated is no longer our student, and may well not be. But they certainly, many of them will come back, or that will be the first place they look when they are sent out. So yeah, we have a lot of work to do to get information out to the general education community about our rights, responsibilities, and authority. But we also have the responsibility on task force to look at this, and it's not just incarcerated, but special ed students, and in very unique needs that they bring to us, and many bring just their own set of needs, you know, that we need to address. And graduation is not as high a mountain as sometimes people believe, you know. Now, on the other hand, I have to say, in a very positive way, that Kansas, you know, is one of the leading states in the nation for graduation of special needs students. You know, so it's not like we haven't been doing a good job. But a good job means, a great job means we serve everyone. We're going to meet their needs. So that's a challenge for us. Thank you very much, Tricia, for your presentation. And we'll be talking to SEAC and the representatives. And for many of you, SEAC is a special education council, and It is made up of a wide and diverse group of people who represent many different groups of many times underserved and special needs students. Our next meeting is in January. I serve on that committee, representing the State Board of Education, and the SEAC has been a great resource and advocate to the board, and we value their opinions and their recommendations. So anything that we do with graduation is going to have a SEAC, a stamp of approval, so to speak, as it comes to the board. So thank you, Trish, for what you do, and all the folks that work with special needs students across our state. You do a great job, but we can do it better, and certainly we can change the pipeline in terms of leaving, whether it's graduated or not, to the couch or to incarceration, and make it to the workforce. So thank you. Okay, we'll be moving on at this time. Jared, before we go to our subcommittee meeting rooms, is there anything that you have yet to say or want to add to this morning's presentation?
Yeah, the only thing I'll just add is that when we come back, we'll have about an hour here for our subcommittees. We'll come back, and then Kelly, Ed, and Christy will have you guys kind of just give an update, share, and then I will just ask that you guys stay on before we finish, just to talk about moving forward. So, Peggy, I believe we're ready to go.
Indeed.
Okay, well, we'll see everybody in about an hour.
And we are on time with the agenda. All right. Thank you very much.
Well, wow, I think that was an awesome hour. I know that our subcommittee just had, so I'm just really excited. I think we probably could have talked for days. But let's go ahead and get some feedback from each of you. Christy, do you want to start with your subcommittee?
Yeah, sure. And like our group, we just have so many great ideas and so many conversations that time just flies by. It's like, oh no, we're running out of time. But just to remind everyone, we are looking at grouping different course requirements. And so we had lots of conversations in general about making sure that we have a baseline of what that means for each different group. And so we are, in general, like I said, these are just conversations that could have kept going, but looking at a certain number of courses, let's just say math, for example, keeping it the same, like at 3, but we wanted to explore options of possibly having at the end of the sophomore year, if they have an assessment, whether that's the state assessment or the ACT or work keys, something that shows mastery, it might give them that 3rd year that we're requiring. Another option would be to have courses that may be in a pathway that are just heavily involved in that same content specific category that could count as the 3rd math or the 3rd science. So we were looking at that. We also always keep coming back to the importance of the IPS and making sure that we are gearing the students' requirements towards what they need. So we'd had lots of conversations about that and how to make sure maybe that's somehow tied to the graduation requirements or an aspect of being required to graduate, to make sure students have completed aspects of the IPS. So we talked about that. Trying to go through my notes here. Anyone else in the group think I'm missing a main topic for today? Another specific thing that we visited about was as far as the term electives, trying to make sure that maybe we look at grouping all of our courses or options in these different categories. And so we have specific classes that are required in a freshman English or sophomore English. That might be a bad example, but then we have other courses in that category that are traditionally electives that are you require 1 more year of something, and it gives the students options. May or may not make sense without looking at it, but that was another aspect that we discussed.
Okay, anything else, Christy?
Nope. Like I said, we just could use more time. It just flies by, and it's such an important topic that we are all very passionate. We want to do our best, but it's a great group.
All right, thank you, awesome. And before Ed, before you talk, I just wanted to mention also, when you talked about the IPS, and that was something that our group really talked about, is at some point this group really need to have a conversation about the IPS. And every group that I talk to, that's the number one thing that they mention is how included the IPS is in this conversation. And so that's just something else as we get down the road, we need to make sure we're targeting, is really how that is a big piece of this. Ed, do you want to talk about yours group?
Absolutely. The last 2 or 3 virtual meetings that we've had, we have been divided into smaller work groups, addressing strategies related to different audiences, those kinds of things. So it was delightful today to be able to have everybody back in one large group, and we had some great discussions. So from those smaller work groups, there are basically 7 broader themes that have emerged from those. That will ultimately make recommendations to the larger task force about. So what we did today was divide up those themes amongst the folks who are on the subcommittee, and we're going to be working on the actual recommendations related to those for the task force. So we've I think done a pretty effective job of distilling things down to the most essential pieces related to competency-based education and mastery. So Melanie and Brianna, I mean, some of you that were on that meeting today, feel free to jump in and add additional information. There are some pieces that we've asked Dr. Fernkop to, some information we've asked him for from KSDE, specifically how many kids graduate at the end of their third year, whether we can tease that out from the data that's collected. Of those kids, what does their post-secondary success look like? Because we think one of the big objections that folks may have to this is that kids who graduate with 21 credits and they don't graduate with the 25 credits that we require for graduation in Auburn-Washburn are going to be less successful. So we're trying to tease that out to see what that looks like in terms of post-secondary success as we currently measure it, so that we can have those talking points for the larger task force. So any of my colleagues that are on the subcommittee, if there's anything else that you'd like to add, please feel free to hop on and talk.
See, we got good wait time, right, Ed? I don't know if there's anybody else.
I think we're just waiting for Mr. Tallman to jump on here.
Okay. Well, awesome. Thank you, Ed. Kelly, you want to talk about the third subcommittee?
Sure. We had great discussion too. So thank you for everyone for that great hour. We had, obviously, we looked at a lot of different list of value and examples of whether they're value-added assets, market value assets, how to label them, how many we should have, continues to be a good discussion point. One thing that is very important is making sure that the flexibility for schools to have some say in determining what those are. And like all the other groups, or the two other groups, the importance of having that robust individual plan of study for each and every student by the time they graduate, so that they can be successful, which ties into what Ed was talking about, the success rate that schools are judged upon. And then obviously just keeping in mind that we want to make sure that we are addressing and planning so that all students can meet this graduation requirements, and including these special populations that we have in our schools and our school systems. So again, it was a lot of great discussion and just a very valuable time. So did I leave anything out, Jared, or any other subcommittee member?
I don't think so, Kelly. I think I'll go back to what I said after Christy talked, that and on our group, and Christy, you mentioned it, that IPS and having that plan when those kids really enter high school, and how we're organizing that in our different districts. And I know as a high school principal that IPS process is a beast, and I use that word, but I think it's so very valuable for each one of our students and our teachers and parents. And as you talk to some of you that are involved in the business world, and how important that is to you also, I think that just has to be really our starting point that we go back to when we talk about purpose, and that goes back to our kids and the reason that we're having these conversations. And so I'll just want to thank each and every one of you for the work that you've had, the discussion that you've had, the passion that you've had throughout this. It's really hard to cut other people off in Zoom, but I know it's just because everybody is just passionate about this task. And so it's been awesome and exciting, and we're getting really close. So Jim, do you want to close us out here? I know I'll have the subcommittee leaders, we'll have you guys stay on after we're finished, but for a few minutes, Jim, do you want to finish us up here?
Yeah, thanks, Jared. It was brought up earlier about the Kansas Star Recognition Program for 2021 and the awards that were identified at the awardees that were identified at the last state board meeting. And many of you have received awards and recognition. And when you look at the first one we have is high school graduation. We have 145 school districts that were recognized with plus 95% rate of graduation. across the state. That's phenomenal. Congratulations. So with the 95% graduation rate, why are we even worried about it? Because we're doing well, and we know we can do better, and we know that things like IPS, value-added diplomas and mastery are leading us into the future. And as was mentioned earlier by one of the subcommittees, this might be something that we look at regularly. How do we stay in pace that the graduation diploma is in fact valued not just by the in schools and parents, but also by citizens and employers. So we're doing pretty well. I would encourage you to look at the Kansas Star Recognition Program information and awards. There's a lot of great information in there about the wonderful things that are happening in our state. So congratulations. What the big thing coming up is we have another meeting on December 2nd, and we'll work more, but December 15th, we'll be in Topeka to present to the state board. I'm excited about that opportunity. The state board has heard a little bit about what our progress and work has been, but not a lot. So I'm very excited to have that opportunity to present to the board at kind of a midway point. We're also looking at the option of in-person meeting on January 20th in Topeka. It won't be hard for us to find a spot to meet. You need to be thinking about that as in terms of COVID and all the things that have gone on in our schools over the last year. And I'm looking forward to it. It's really become nice to see the different folks here at the meetings, and but I'm still an old timer, and it would be great to get together and have face-to-face conversations. But we want to do it safely, and we want to make sure that we have it arranged in a way that meets all participants' needs. I want to thank you for your service to the students in Kansas for now and in the future. Jared, I'm going to close the meeting and say have a safe and joyful Thanksgiving. We'll see you December 2nd. We've had a great meeting. I agree with the chairs. The conversation was quick. I was surprised how fast the time went, and the quality of conversations that we had. So thank you for making this an important part of your day and your time, and we'll see you on December 2nd. Have a great Thanksgiving. Be safe.